So Shaherose is going to be interviewing Jessica. Jessica, as you know, she was at Y Combinator. She has funded Airbnb, The Muse. She also, their last class that they just did, it was their most diverse class to date in terms of funding people around the globe and also women-based startups. So Shaherose, come on up and let's get the panel going, or the interview going.
Thank you. All right. So, how many of you are founders in the room? Right. How many of you are interested in figuring out if you should belong in an incubator? Yeah. Okay. So that's what this session is really going to help you figure out. We're going to talk to Jessica Livingston, who I call is the Duchess of all incubators, which you would probably agree. One of the sort of top performing incubators is Y Combinator. So we've been in touch with Jessica for many, many years. We've had the opportunity to have her involved in a couple events, but this is probably the first time we're going to have her finally on the main stage because she's so busy. So we're excited. So please, Jessica, join us on the stage.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. Yeah. I have to admit, I'm having problems. I'm not sure whether to recline or sit. I think I'm going to sit up. I'm going to sit up.
I mean, you're wearing a skirt. I shouldn't do that. All right. So, again, we're so excited to have you here.
Thank you.
And, yeah, we're really excited to share some insights about the incredible work that you do. So, usually when you do the YC conferences, you're running the Fireside chat.
Yes, I am. I'm so glad to be on this side.
You can just relax a little bit because I have to think on my feet a little bit and come up with these questions. So the first thing I think the audience is really interested in knowing is if they're starting a company and they're thinking about an incubator, how should they choose an incubator, or should they even think about an incubator? So what kinds of companies should think about joining an incubator?
Well, I think anyone looking to start a startup should consider joining an incubator. What I would probably do if it were me starting a startup, I'd choose an incubator. I mean, if you are a seasoned entrepreneur and you've done like 10 startups and you have tons of investor connections, maybe you don't need an incubator. Right. Although we've had a lot of like two-time founders, like Steve Huffman of Reddit came back and did Hipmunk with us. Justin Kahn of Justin TV did exec with us. So we still add value.
Right. But why do you think the seasoned entrepreneurs came back?
Oh, they love us. No, I think I do think they like us, and we help them a lot with their first venture. But I think what's special about Y Combinator, which is one of the reasons they come back again, is that they know that this 3 months is going to be super intense, and it almost like forces them to be super productive and get stuff done. Certainly, you know, having access to the YC partners, you don't learn all the stuff we know in just your one time as an entrepreneur. So we still add value as advisors to them. And demo day, like presenting to 400 and more of the top investors in the country, that's a great opportunity. Because even if you have connections with them, you still have to go out and meet with them, and that's very time consuming. So
is it would you say the majority of the profile of the founders that do apply and do get in are maybe first-time entrepreneurs, and the value that they're going to get is access to the investors and the network?
It's hard to say, because now that we've funded 644 startups, I mean, there are a lot of different types of people. Like, a lot of people say, what's a Y Combinator founder like?
Right.
And it's so hard.
That was my next question.
It's so hard to say there's just one type. They're all shapes and sizes with different experiences, but a lot of them are first-time founders. Okay. A lot of them are technologists or programmers, but we're funding more and more non-programmers. Right. It's people who are from all over the country and all over the world. There are also a lot of people from the Bay Area. It's a real mix of people, even if they might be connected in the Bay Area. We still can help them with their negotiations for their funding rounds and stuff like that. But in terms of like, okay, I'm thinking about doing an incubator, you know, what should I do it? I think it comes down to like one thing. Is it good? And how do you judge if an accelerator. I always swap out accelerator and incubator. I mean the same thing.
Yeah.
How are they good? Well, I mean, I would probably judge it on what companies come out of that accelerator.
Right.
So I would first look at, are these companies good companies, and are they growing and doing well and getting rounds of funding? And then I would talk to those people. And I know Y Combinator founders are really generous with their time. When people get accepted to interview at Y Combinator, often they get emails like, can I talk to you about this? Can you tell me about your experience? And they're really good about sharing like why Y Combinator helped them, help them make the decision if it's good. But I would probably just use that as my criteria. Is it good or is it not? And my God, if you hear stories from people who like have some bad experiences with the people,
Right.
like run.
Right. So good is a subjective thing. You know, everyone evaluates good based on what they think is good. So basically, it's a personal decision, is what you're saying.
Well, not exactly. It's not super subjective because you do have valuations that you can assign to the company. So I would use that as part of the way I judge.
Right.
Like, are these companies like successful companies?
So the output, in the end, it's about the companies and where they're going.
I think it is.
That makes sense.
I think it is.
So when you're looking at applications, what makes you say, yes, we need to interview this team?
Oh,
because you told me they're
gosh.
different, but there's
Yes,
got to be
they're
some.
different. That's
there's
why I'm
gotta be
laughing,
something.
because it's never like absolutely. What makes us excited? Basically, are we excited? Because we're reading like thousands of applications, and you can imagine, it gets a little tedious. So what pops out at us? Certainly the idea. Are we intrigued by this idea? Do we want to learn more? Could it be something huge? That's always exciting. Is it a close-knit team? Like, we get very excited about founders who have worked together for a while or have been childhood friends or college roommates, because, as you know, we see a lot of founder breakups, and that happens when people like band together to apply to Y Combinator and they've known each other for a month. And they always say, but we've been working so well together for this month. And I'm thinking, oh God, this is gonna be hard. Not that it can't work, but close-knit teams are always exciting. Has this idea grown organically out of a problem that the founders have had? That is really exciting for us, because clearly if they're building this product to solve their own problem, they know what their users want because they're their first user. They probably have a very deep domain knowledge, and that's extremely exciting. It's hard when, this is probably a bad example, but when like a 45-year-old guy is like, I'm going to build something for 15-year-old girls and they're going to love it, and it's kind of
just
like,
sounds awkward.
well, I didn't mean it like that, but my point is like, are you solving your own problem? That's very exciting. If you don't really know like what the users are going to want, that can lead you down some bad paths. So we get excited about that. We get excited about when we have a question on what have you built in the past. And sometimes that intrigues us, with things that people have built, like a cool app or something, or we've heard about something and like, oh my God, these were the people that built that. So that kind of excites us, because that's a small predictor of someone's abilities. What have they done in the past? What have they built? How they think about a problem, and that kind of thing. So those are the main things.
What's the most weird thing someone put down on an application for something they've built before?
I don't even remember. We get so many weird. I really can't remember off the top of my head. I mean, there's like sex things that are crazy that we see that we're like, oh my God, did you see that application? Like someone like built this tool for. I don't want to go there, but.
Use your imagination, people.
Yeah.
It's Valentine's Day. Anyways.
I know what it was. I know what the sex thing was. It was for like hooking up with someone remotely. It was a tool.
Okay.
That's all I remember.
Interesting. Long distance relationships. So, talking about these applications and now the founders that you have brought in the last few years, we alluded to the fact that, and we wrote about this too, that this looks like the most diverse set of companies / founders that you have had in a while or ever. So what I've noticed is that I was reading up about a nonprofit that you brought into one of the classes that was building an AIDS HIV vaccine, the more recent one. Right, the
Zadisha.
Zadisha peer-to-peer platform that's taking on Kiva head on, both nonprofit. How does Y Combinator win, and why are you doing this? Why are you going into supporting nonprofits?
Oh boy, we're doing it to be helpful, to help the world. It's a completely benevolent thing because we don't benefit financially.
That's what I was wondering.
We give them $20,000, but that's a donation. We don't get any stock or anything like that. But look, I'll back up quickly because funding nonprofits is a brand new thing for us. And how this started.
And nonprofits need funding, so and you're
Yeah,
funders, so you thought you'd diversify.
We thought we'd just the reason this started is because, Paul, for a long time, many years, has always felt that we could apply a lot of the techniques that we do to helping startups succeed to helping nonprofits.
Makes sense.
Sure, it makes sense. And then you think, oh gosh, in practice it's so hard to do. So let's just start small.
Good.
We met WOTC, we saw them on Hacker News, and Paul was like, this seems like a pretty cool idea. WOTC is crowdfunding medical treatments for people who can't afford it, and it saves lives.
And it's international, right?
It's international.
Give an example of.
An example is a 3-year-old kid who lives 3 hours away from Kathmandu, which is the only place that can give her this life-saving surgery on her stomach that she's having a problem with, and just getting to Kathmandu is an impossibility for her. And so the crowdfunding works. They post a picture of her, tell her story. $600 will save her life. Wow. And so I can donate $10, to this. So any little bit helps. And not to give WOTC a plug, but it gives me shivers just talking about them. When you cap off the funding for one of those surgeries, and so-and-so is funded, they're getting the help they need, and then a month later you get the follow-up email saying she's great, here's a photo of her recovering from her surgery. It's the best feeling in the world.
That's amazing.
So anyway, we met WOTC, and we said, let's try this out. So we brought them on a year ago, ran them through Y Combinator just like we would our for-profit startups, and boy did they do well. They built all this cool stuff. They met a lot of the investors who are very philanthropic personally. They got tons of connections, raised a lot of money to help them keep going and hiring a team, and they're great. And our other startups in the batch have offered them office space. That's and good. They do projects where the proceeds go to WOTC, and so there's really a great connection between the for-profits and WOTC. And so we said, let's do a little bit more, because we do want to, we could donate money to different philanthropies. That would be useful. But really, I think Y Combinator could have more of an impact. Helping these nonprofits. So we have 7 in this batch.
Okay.
And I was just saying to some of the other judges before we came out here, there's some new things. There's some things that are very different about nonprofits. They're much sort of, the community is slower to change. They don't like change. They don't like change that much. But it's a learning process for us, and there's certainly some great nonprofits in this batch. So you will hear more, because only 2 have formally launched.
I'm really happy that you're doing that. I think that's really great. So that's diversity number 1. We talked about also diversity at the founding level, ethnicity. People are coming from all over the world. But there's also diversity in terms of the types of companies that traditionally it was software for software's sake, just building software. And now we're seeing companies a la Uber, right? So software companies that are connecting you to the real world. There was Bloom That.
Yes, Bloom That for Valentine's Day.
Right, and DoorDash.
DoorDash.
So these are companies that are using technology to connect to things or people or systems in the real world. Is that really a tech company? Talk to me about the diversity there.
Well, yeah, there's all these different levels. And the most boring answer, everyone's like, why are you more diverse right now? And I'm not saying we're as diverse as we could be, but it's tracking in the right direction.
Yeah.
It's
growing.
It
takes time, right?
It does take time, a lot of time. And the super boring answer to this is that I think that startups are becoming more mainstream, which I think that thrills me, as boring as it seems. It's so exciting to think that it's not just CS graduate students at Stanford starting startups. It's like every one of you like is here today because you're interested in startups. Yeah. Like that's so cool. Yeah. And so there are reasons for that. I'm sort of let me answer the two different questions.
I loaded 4 questions.
They're very different. In terms of how the different types of startups that are getting started, we're definitely seeing like we funded like food companies and DoorDash and flower delivery companies. And it's the whole software eating the world thing. There's just now this huge opportunity that mobile has enabled, like this huge new opportunity for companies to get started. But also like structurally, you know, we started 9 years ago at this point. And like you didn't have AWS. You had to have someone on your team who knew how to like manage servers and crap like that. And so now it's a lot easier. The infrastructure is there for people who might not be super technical to build a company, and maybe they use WordPress or Weebly instead of like building a site. And that means that a lot of people who don't know how to code but have this deep domain experience that we're so excited about can start companies. Like the example when I talked to Jessica at Women 2.0, you know, I used Medicess as an example. He was a doctor. You know, and he was trying, Gautam was trying to solve a problem where it was like this handoff at the hospital on shifts, and I'd scribble my notes to you and say, okay, here are all the patients, take care of them. And like you couldn't read my notes, and like 60,000 patients a year are dying because of just this sloppy handoff. And so he saw that as a problem, and even though he wasn't a super technical guy, he started the company. So like that's thrilling to me that non-technical people are coming. We're funding a lot of fashion companies, even though I said I don't really know that much about fashion. But
you look amazing.
Thank you. We're doing a lot of fashion companies and food delivery companies, and like you name it, we're doing it.
And this is really the reality of software eating the world.
Yes.
Yes. This is a new generation of companies.
How could I forget Adora Chung of Homejoy, who's maybe we can talk about that later because I'm just so inspired about Adora. I'm so pumped about Adora. But like cleaning services.
Yes.
You know, who would have thought, like when we started Y Combinator, I never in a million years would have said one of our top 4 portfolio companies is going to be like a person who manages cleaners.
Yeah.
But she's doing really well. So different types of companies are getting started, and more people are starting them. And more people are starting them, one, because I said structurally it's easier, but also it's like more normal. 10 years ago, if you were starting a startup, people had heard about startups, but your parents still wanted you to go to Goldman Sachs and get a job there, and they didn't want you to like give up a big salary in this prestigious company for a little like dumb little startup. And now I feel like it's a normal path for people, and that helps.
Yeah, and do you think it was all because of the social network?
You know, it's funny. I don't think it's all because of the social network at all, but surprisingly, we did see a spike in applications for Y Combinator after that movie came out.
Not surprised.
But I think it's a lot of things. I think just more people are doing startups, and you read about it more.
Right. It's more exposed.
It's just, it's much more exposed, which explains when I said we have the most diverse class ever. We have people from 22 different countries, which surprised me. It's not like we're visiting all these countries saying, do Y Combinator. They've heard about us and they apply. I, again, think it's just startups are more mainstream. So there are people from more different countries, more females in this batch than we've ever funded, which is awesome.
Do you know? Sorry, I put you on the spot there.
The number, I'm not sure the number of people, but 22 of the startups have a female founder on the team. Yes. Some are even like 2 females more. Awesome. So it's great. We also have like a father-son team. We have like 2 twins. We have the oldest founder on one team that we've ever funded. The youngest founder that we've ever funded is just sort of like more people are doing it. That's amazing. Our applications are reflecting that, and the people we're funding are reflecting that.
That's amazing.
So that was a really long answer. I'm sorry.
No, I asked her 4 questions. What do you expect? Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to load you with 2 questions now. So one is, you all started Y Combinator 6, you said 6 years ago?
Oh my God, 9.
9 years ago, sorry.
Yes.
You said 9. And you guys were the only kids on the block. Let's talk about that.
Yep.
And now there's a lot of incubators / accelerators. So the first part of the question is, tell us the story of how you got started and why you got started. And then secondly, do you think there's too many incubators now?
Okay, I'll try to make it brief how we got started, because
it's a fun story.
It's like startups in that it was really by accident in a lot of ways.
It was an experiment.
It was an experiment, and like we never ever in a million years would have predicted we'd be as big as we are now. Like, it was just a little experiment that Paul and I were doing, and we roped in Robert and Trevor. Paul Graham is my husband and co-founder, and what was happening at the time? Okay, I was working at an investment bank, and it was like the bubble had burst big time, and like my budget was cut. It was just carnage within the investment banking industry. So I was kind of bored. So I started working on Founders at Work way back in 2004.
What made you do that?
I started meeting people through Paul who had done startups, and I was blown away, and still am today, by all the crazy stories that happen about how startups get started and all the hurdles that they get over that you just never read about in the press. Maybe you read about it more now, but back then you didn't. This was all a mystery. You didn't hear these stories.
Well, there was no really blogging platform.
Yeah, exactly. So it was all a mystery. So I said, you know, this is interesting enough that I'm going to start interviewing some people. And then I sort of got a few chapters together, and I was like, this is really cool. And I got, I said, this is going to be my like outside project. So got a book deal and started working on that. So I was sort of getting more into startups, and Paul, we were talking a lot about it, and he really wanted to give back and be an angel investor, because he had been acquired, his company had been acquired in 1998, but he didn't want to like deal with all the like junk that goes along with being an investor. There's a lot of paperwork, and he didn't want to meet with meetings. He just wanted to help the startups. So we just were talking over dinner all the time about this, and we just came up with the idea like, okay, Paul and I will start this company to help young founders. It was first always about young founders, and we will give them like $10,000. We will help incorporate them, because by the way, back then incorporating to someone who is a programmer seems like the most foreign thing ever, and it was very scary.
Before LegalZoom.
Exactly, it was before all these things. So we said, okay, let's do it. And he said, I'll advise the startups, and because he's a programmer. And I said, okay, and I'll run it, and I'll do all the operational stuff, like that. So we said, okay, but neither of us know anything about investing. Neither do Robert and Trevor, who are Paul's co-founders at ViaWeb. We said, let's do a summer batch and do like a little program, have people move here. By advising a handful of startups, we'll learn more about it. We'll see how it goes. And we'll just make it this informal thing. You can mothball your company at the end of the summer if you want to go back to school. We were really targeting like young programmers. So Paul was an essayist, pretty well-known essayist in the programming area at this point. So we like made a site, put it up, lo and behold, we got applications. We're like, oh shit, this is kind of real. People are gonna fly to Boston and interview with us. So we interviewed a bunch of people over the course of 2 days, and we tried very early on with Y Combinator to do exactly the opposite of what investors traditionally had done, because we were so opposed. We thought it was so broken. Like, why does it take an angel investor 3 months to decide to fork over $25,000? Like, make a decision quickly.
So 3 hours?
It was the end of the day. At the end of each day, we'd call people and say, we're going to fund you or not. Wow. And that was unheard of. Like, obviously, they're the stories like the Google got Andy Bechtolsheim, gave them the check. But usually it's like, it was a really long process with tons of like paperwork that had all these heavy-handed terms that were totally pro-investor. We're like, no, we want to be pro-founder. We went to our law firm. I found a law firm. We had to incorporate Y Combinator. This is after we had accepted people. We're like, oh God, we got to be a legal organization in order to fund these people.
True startup.
Yeah, this is total startup mentality. And like the lawyer, we said, we want you to create legal templates for us to use to help these people. And they're like, we can't do that. You have to go to a law firm, and which of course would cost like $15,000 to $20,000. We're like, no, make the paperwork. It's a template, and you fill in the names, you know, and the amount of stock. So we did, that was like one of the original things. It seems so easy now, but back then it was hard.
Pioneer.
So we had Reddit in that batch. We had the founders of Justin TV who were working on something else. We had Sam Altman of Looped. We lucked out and got a great group of people. And what we learned from that summer, it was the same structure as it is today. Like, you work from home and you come in for our weekly dinner. We didn't have office hours because we were so small, but we'd meet with them. Have the guest speaker who, weren't like Ben Silbermann of Pinterest and Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. They were like randoms who sort of had some experience from Boston that we knew, who would come in.
Dude off the street.
Yeah, practically. But you know what? It was very interesting because we did teach them a lot. And we learned that, like, aha moment was very early on in that 3-month funding cycle, where we learned that, gosh, doing this as a group, they help each other. They learn from each other. Right. And this was like, whoa, this is new. This is really cool. And also, by the way, giving only, I think we gave $12,000 or something horribly low. Yeah. That was very new too. And what allowed us to do that, it was very different. People, like, you either had like maybe an angel, but you were going talking to VCs, and like when you're first starting a company, you don't need $5 million. Right. You need like $100,000 to see if your idea can work, to test. Mm-hmm. So that was very novel, and we learned that, like, gosh, it gets them into first gear, right? And then we'll introduce them to investors, and then they go on. And we had this concept of having a demo day where they, rather than going to the investors' offices separately and having all these meetings, the investors came to us for short presentations.
All contrary. So you did
everything different. Everything was different, but it worked. And then we said, oh God, like, this was pretty cool. Let's do this again, but we don't want like someone else to be the Y Combinator of Silicon Valley. We want to be the Y Combinator of Silicon Valley. Meanwhile, we knew no one really in Silicon Valley. So Paul was like, let's go out to Silicon Valley this winter. This is in September. And I, being more conservative than he is, said, oh no, don't do this to me. I just like got this company in the office and everything set up. But we moved out, and Trevor Blackwell, our other partner, had space in his company. We used that. The paint was still drying on the walls as the first people in the winter batch arrived for dinner. It was crazy, but it was good. And again, another batch. There were 9 startups in that batch. And we just, built very slowly. And I was telling someone this the other day, like, a lot of people doubted us, and investors didn't understand what we were doing. People didn't get it, but the ones who did loved it. And that's sort of very good advice for startups. If you can make something that just a small group of people love, you can probably expand that. Whereas if you create something that, like, lots of people think, oh, that's pretty good, that's bad. So we grew small, and we sort of grew from there. So that's how we got started, and now we're
there
much
too many
bigger.
incubators?
Too many incubators. Okay.
That's a crazy story, though, right? That was amazing. Thank you. That was beautiful.
Probably. We used to keep track of who they were. Often Paul would search for text from our website that's like written in Paul Graham prose, and he'd like find new incubators that way because they had copied our website. Oh, wow. But we don't really keep track. I know there are a lot. I feel like there's like maybe 200. Yeah. There are probably too many, but I don't have any real thoughts on, like, is that bad? Right.
So we're not in an incubator bubble per se.
We might be. Yeah. I mean, there are definitely some people, like, you wonder, like, really? They're doing this? Right. And
that's part of your evaluation, right?
I guess what you really need to do is say, are these people running this incubator, are they really good? And do they know a lot about startups? Are they, like, deeply involved in startups? That would be good. It's just hard. Then you got to, like, let them get a few companies, see who comes out the other end, and see what happens. I think we're in a little bit of a bubble. Like,
it's exciting, right?
Yeah.
Awesome. We are going to turn the tables and ask the audience if they have questions for Jessica. So if you do, please raise your hand, and we have a mic on the left side. We have a question right here at the front.
Hi, you said that you're actually starting to incubate a lot of non-technical founders. How are they doing the development? What's usually their strategy there?
That's a very good question. A lot of them will have a technical co-founder, but from the people I've seen that are non-technical founders, if they're lucky enough to find a good technical founder, they're great, they're off to the races. But what I've found that they struggle with is evaluating technical people. Just as I'm not very good at evaluating how good someone is as a programmer, because I'm not one, they can't either. And then they bring someone on who sucks and like builds this crappy website, and like we have to they're always like, can you hook me up with someone? Yeah. And we don't have like a major supply of programmers because they're all swallowed up by our portfolio companies. And it's hard. They struggle. And so like your question was, what do they do? I've seen it all. They have like contractors. Like, I don't recommend this, but some people farm it out to other countries. Like, I don't recommend that. It's not good because like the technology, even if it's an idea that's not technical, I'm certain there's a technical component to making it a successful product. And so you want someone on the team who really understands your vision and the product really well, and you can't do that if you farm it out. So it's tough. We are funding them, but they struggle a little bit more than others.
All right, I think I saw another question at the back there.
Hi, I kind of building on that is, so do you fund people that are female founders that just have a team of IT people, or do you want them to be a co-founder, the IT person? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. We have funded people who have like employees who
are just a team member that's not necessarily have as much say in the game. Because I've worked with technical people. We don't always agree. And my nightmare is I bring someone on and they don't agree with me. And then what do I do?
That's bad.
Yeah,
and so
then
really
and then I've got no power because I've put them equal to me.
I mean, your first challenge, like the hardest thing that you could do that would be the best, is to find someone who you trust so much that you're probably not going to disagree on major things. Right. That's hard to do, though.
When you don't bump up against them every day.
Yeah. I'm telling you, it's like the biggest problem that non-technical people find is, how do I find a good technical co-founder? If you're still in college, maybe it's a little easier because you can just go to the CS classes or whatever, but it's really hard. So yes, we do fund people who are single founders with people on their team that are really just like doing the code in the back room, but it's not ideal, but we do fund them.
Okay, thank you.
Up here, there was one in the middle that I saw earlier, so wherever the mic goes, really.
And I'm blinded by this light, so
I know,
I'll just listen.
Hi, thank you so much for your presentation. It's inspiring. You spoke about how, from your world, nonprofits can really apply some of the knowledge base that you have. And I'm wondering, too, if it can go the other way, because there are a lot of nonprofit fundraisers, for instance, who are obtaining huge lead and major gifts at the $1 million, $5 million level and above. And it seems to me that there may be, I guess I'm asking your opinion, there may be some way of looking at those nonprofits that are worth investing in the community, but also worth learning from. So I'm wondering if you have a comment about that.
Can you rephrase the question just once more? I didn't quite exactly get, like, is it worth looking at nonprofits?
Okay, so I've worked in the nonprofit world for about 30 years as a major gift fundraiser. And when I hear about how you make decisions about what to invest in and why you would make those investments, it seems to me that nonprofits are asking the same questions. We want to build community, we want to invest in community, and there seems to be a link between the same kinds of knowledge that you have and what nonprofits have too. And if that can't be, maybe, I guess my question is, can that be utilized or codified or?
I don't know, because it's like, it's a lot in our heads. We're choosing who to fund based on, a lot of it is our interaction during the interview. It's hard to codify it, I guess, is my question. Like, yes, always choose, someone who's led by a very determined person, like someone who you think could be a good leader and who is resilient and has thick skin because there's so much adversity. Choose someone who is very flexible-minded and is thinking big, but I don't know how much advice, like we're not really good at saying, here's who you should choose.
It's not a formula.
Yeah, it's not a formula. Thank you.
Yeah, got it. Okay, we have one more question over here.
Hi, so I'm a female founder and I've just finished business school and moved out here. And I've gotten a lot of advice saying like, oh, do an accelerator, do an incubator, or don't. And one of the things that someone said to me was, you join a program and then suddenly you're in competition with everyone that you've been growing with and working with. And so there's this now like really intense competition between people for attention from the investors after a demo day. What do you say to that kind of criticism, to that style of presentation?
I would say that that's not true at Y Combinator. And I think if you asked anyone who went through the program, they might say like, yeah, when you're presenting with 70 other people on this stage for 2.5 minutes to a group like literally the size of investors, like, yes, it's tiring for the investors. I feel sorry for them. But I don't think there's a sense of competition. I think there's such an amazing camaraderie amongst the founders, and they know that there's enough money for everyone. Like, it's never like, oh, there's like haves and have-nots, and there's only like 5 that get funded. Everyone manages, if they have a good product and a good team, and they're actually good, they'll all get funding. Might not be from the same person, but they'll all get funding. So I don't think, at least at Y Combinator, that's never been a problem that we've seen.
Awesome. And we're out of time.
Oh, sorry, I talked so much.
No, we were totally on track. So thank you again for coming.
My pleasure.
And yeah, I hope the audience enjoyed that.
Have fun at the rest of the conference.
Thank you.